I would like to now introduce our next speaker, Jenny Marchant, who is currently president of Cambridge UCU and works at the University Museums.
Hi, I've actually not been out very much this week because I've not been well, but this is an issue that's really close to my heart, casualisation. It's an issue that is at the root of so many other problems that we see in the higher education sector. The fear of working precariously and relying on the goodwill of your supervisors or your immediate managers. I mean, that leads people to end up taking on these ever-increasing workloads, to not feel able to say no. And it's doing those extras that they think will help them lead to that elusive permanent contract, or just help them keep the one that they've got. It causes people not to speak up when they're being bullied. It causes them to not feel able to speak up when other people around them are being bullied. And this leads to the really toxic situation that we've got at this university and others, where people feel, unable to actually make their lives better and make the lives of the people around them better. It stops people being able to plan their lives and make just like those simple decisions, whether or not they can go on holiday, whether or not they can sign that contract on a house. It's really pervasive casualisation against staff, and it makes people sick. They've got great financial worries because you never know when your contract's ending. You save money to put aside for those stints when you're unemployed. You can't make decisions for the long term, and the stress and the worry of waiting to find out whether or not you're going to keep your job, and that's all pervasive. And it disproportionately affects women and disabled people and people of colour. We see that more and more, that these groups are disproportionately affected by these casual contracts, and being in those positions, that actually leads to the exacerbation of things like the gender pay gap, the race pay gap, pensions gaps when you've got years and years of service that doesn't count towards your pension. I started out working in a different sector. I worked in field archaeology, which is renowned for being sort of a really poor employer. Really bad conditions, really bad contracts, and they were the norm. So it was a real shock to me when I started working for Cambridge University. And I looked at the terms and conditions that I was being offered on a TES, on a test contract. And I just thought that this is worse than anything I had put up with as an archaeologist. I was expected to put up with it with a smile as well. It's you're meant to be grateful for what you're being offered. So I worked for over 2 years on a test contract, and they have no security. It is a 0 hours contract, and no sick pay. It's a long time to be without sick pay. Just like simple things, knowing that you can take a couple of days off with a heavy cold, and actually more than that, knowing that if you have something seriously wrong with you, that you actually do have a safety net. It's really important, and it's disgraceful that somewhere like the University of Cambridge thinks that it's okay to employ staff on these sorts of terms and conditions. Somewhere as rich as Cambridge, that you've got people questioning whether or not they can pay the rent or take a sick day. This isn't what life should be like in 2019. It's 2019, isn't it? Yes. But yeah, so I think what's also really damaging about casual contracts, particularly in the higher education sector, is that it's often hidden. there's lots of people on these contracts. 50% of our workforce here are on some kind of precarious contract. But people actually don't feel able to talk about it. I felt ashamed being on a test contract for 2 years. I felt ashamed to let somebody treat me that badly, that I was sort of putting up with these conditions. Other colleagues, they didn't know. I would talk about it sometimes, and people would be really shocked. And I think, what we really need to make clear is just how pervasive this problem is and how negative it is for people working in the sector. It's something that I can see how it might have come in to higher education, sort of trying, bringing in a few extra people on a project basis. But actually now we're seeing that it's an institutionalised problem. It's part of the system. And that's why, as well as doing the work that we're doing locally, we have to have things like this strike, where we're standing up and standing together against this casualisation. And it really is the only way to make the big impacts that will impact on lots and lots of people's lives.